Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ryan J. Downey with Screen Crusades on Knotfest, and I am hanging virtually with my good friend, Mr. Michael Vampire of Vampires Everywhere. Dude, how's it going?
It is going good, man. Currently on tour, doing the grind.
You are somewhere, presumably in the middle of nowhere.
We are somewhere in Idaho.
Here's a question I got to ask. When you're out and about traveling these fine lands of the United States, what is it like when Vampires Everywhere goes into a truck stop to use the truck stop shower in the middle of the Midwest? What's the vibe from the onlookers?
Well, funny because in 2010, if we were to do that, I feel like they would throw coal at us or something. I mean, in fact, I feel like they have thrown coal in the past. Now they're more accepting. I mean, we walked in there and they gave us free showers. Walking there looking like Gothic Owl of Snow. And they're accepting it more now than they did before. I think the culture's slowly changing. Obviously the old time farmers and stuff are a little confused, but it's definitely a changed environment, man, I think.
One of the things we're going to talk about, in addition to the return of Vampires Everywhere, is we're going to get, it's Halloween season as we're speaking. We're going to get right into the origin of the band name, which is usually a stock, boring question. But in this instance, there's a lot to unpack because it's very Halloween. Vampires Everywhere, of course, being a comic book that we see in the great modern vampire classic, The Lost Boys. So before we even jump into The Lost Boys, what do you remember being your first experience with horror as a genre, and then vampires specifically?
Well, when I was younger, my mom wanted to get rid of me most of the time, so she'd buy me videotapes. And most of the videotapes that were available at that time were horror. So I don't know if you remember the pharmacies that used to have videotapes in them as well.
Yeah.
And so I got introduced to all these weird horror flicks. But I mean, I got into vampires most of all. I've always been kind of into the aesthetic. Obviously, Dracula was the first thing I've ever seen as a kid, the black and white version. And I fell in love with
the one from the 30s, like the
Bela Lugosi, yeah. I really liked that, and then I started getting into the Hammer stuff. I don't know, man. Fright Night. When I look back on it now, it feels like it was yesterday, but it's right. It's mind blowing how far away that was.
I know. Even just now hearing myself say modern vampire classic, it's like, oh, that movie's almost 40 years old. Just crazy.
Well, if you ask my bandmates what their modern classic would be, most of them would probably say something like I don't know, what's a newer vampire movie, man? I don't even know anymore.
Underworld.
Underworld.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, or I guess A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. That's more recent than.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Not. And you know what's crazy? I just, having been a fan of both of these movies for so long and seen both of them so many times, I just learned the other day that Near Dark came out just a couple of weeks after The Lost Boys.
And wow. It is 1987, right?
Yeah, 86 or 87. Yeah. And it's interesting to me because they're almost counterpoints to one another, in that The Lost Boys was one of the first presentations of vampirism as less of a curse and more of like a fun party, the whole, it's fun to be a vampire vibe, aesthetic, the tagline on the poster. And then you have Near Dark, which is really grisly and grim. And it's also some immortal vampires living that Peter Pan life, but rather than having a nice sunken hotel in a particular town to rule over, they're nomadic and they're running around and looking for new places to hide from the sun. And the brutality of that movie is it doesn't flinch away from, hey, this isn't romantic. And The Lost Boys can be brutal as well. And ultimately, of course, our heroes that we're to identify with choose not the way of the vampire. But it definitely felt like a big step into something you would think as an audience member sometimes of what's so bad about this? It seems pretty cool. Well, who would want to do that? Do you remember kind of what your early thoughts were on kind of wrestling with that stuff and some of the, I guess, the larger questions about life and existence and everything that's in those stories?
I think I've always had a kind of a fear of death as a young person. So I don't know where that came from. Probably because my mother was a nurse. She kind of instilled, don't get sick. I still got that call. The person that called was her, probably saying, don't get sick. But that's that whole thing kind of stuck with me. So when I figured out there was some sort of being that could be like an immortal or something along that line, it really kind of resonated with me a lot. And it stuck with me for so long. I mean, I remember seeing The Lost Boys in the movie theater. I think my stepdad had taken me, and I was like, this is too cool. And I don't understand why I loved it so much, but it just, for some reason, it just stuck with me. And it was funny because, jumping ahead a little bit, when I had that near fatal car accident, it was brought back like heavily into my life. I don't even know, maybe I was laying in the bed thinking about it or something, but there was a vibe, man, that's got back into me. And that's why, I started the band.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it was the fear of death that started off for me. And I think that fear kind of left as I got older. I got a little more rowdy, but after the accident, I think it's, I have post-traumatic stress from it. So that whole culture of not dying and having a immortality of beauty and stuff like that. I mean, that's everyone loves that. And we're all obsessed with that technically, right?
Of course. Yeah. It plays into a lot of our existential fears and ideas. And it also, that allure, the romantic side to it, as much as these are monsters, there is a fantastical temptation at play. And I feel like The Lost Boys explores that so well by giving us these vampires who aren't, regal barons and lords from thousands of years ago. They're like cool. They're riding motorcycles and wearing leather jackets and looking very contemporary cool in the 80s.
And that's Joel Schumacher, man, because originally they wanted them to be little kids. In
That's
the original
right.
screenplay.
Yeah, more like Peter Pan.
Exactly, and that would have been cool. I don't really know where the storyline would have went with that too much. Kind of.
It's hard to do. It's hard to do sequels too when you cast kids.
As
vampires.
They shouldn't have done it anyway, because they brutalized that whole chapter.
Oh, I just pretend they didn't do sequels. I'm just saying in franchises in general.
I hope you're ready for that new one, man. That cast looks brutal.
Oh, that's right.
I don't see any mullets, so.
Yeah, mullet free. That's a bummer. So as you were, I think, by the way, a lot of us who end up fascinated with this stuff have very similar stories, from childhood and things like that, and this kind of anxiety about these bigger things. So as you were coming out of your accident and, literally like getting yourself back together, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. How
did this concept then that this would be such a big part of the band and what you would do musically? How did that first form?
It's interesting. Everything I do, from my lyrics to the aesthetic and everything like that, I don't try very hard. It kind of just comes out, and that's kind of the way I want it to be. I remember one of my members, and we didn't have a band name yet for this, and we were big Lost Boys fans. We wanted to call it the Lost Boys, obviously, and it was taken, and we were pissed, and I tried to fight to get it. And then I remember watching the movie and seeing the comic book, and I'm like, what do you think of this? Is this too literal? And at the time, I didn't think that would be a colliding thing with Twilight. And
right.
People want to know that is the comic book, and it's not so special to them, but that's how the name came, because we came to an agreement that's the coolest thing we could possibly do besides love.
Well, it's just Death by Stereo was already taken.
That's taken, yeah. And I think there was another one too. I forgot what band it was, man, but they have a reference too.
Yeah, it's a movie full of references. So let's dig into that movie specifically. Did you have a favorite character, favorite scene? Anything you want to dive into? We can get in the weeds.
There's a million of them, man. I mean, David is definitely my favorite character by far. I feel like I connect with him most of all. I've had kind of sadism in me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that caught me as a kid was the motorcycle scene. That was the first thing. I can't beat your bike. He's like, you only got to keep up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay. And then Lost in the Shadow song came on, And Lou Graham's song, dude. I know this movie way too. It kills me how much I know it. And that really got me into it. Because I loved motorcycles at the time as a young kid. And I was like, damn, vampires on motorcycles. That's super sick. And I think the idea when he's like, initiation's over, we're on the tree. They're looking down on him. I was like, okay, that is so sick. Those two scenes really got me. What really pissed me off is the fact that he finally turns into Michael turned into a vampire at the end, and we don't get to see much of it.
Yeah. And he really only uses the power of vampirism to unmake himself by defeating everybody else. I remember being a kid too. It's funny because we've both seen the movie so many times, but I still remember the surprise twist, spoiler alert, about who the head vampire was, and being surprised, right, when they realized, like, wait, there's still somebody out there, like, who could it be? Because they did a great job of doing the red herring thing, like it never crossed my mind at first that would turn out to be the patriarch of these vampires.
Well, they threw that twist on you, man. I mean, they had him, they're badgering him and all that in the video store in the beginning, so it kind of throws you off. Yeah. But when the Hounds of Hell thing, when I saw connected the Hounds of Hell and the dog, and I was like, okay, maybe it is him.
He does have a Hound of Hell.
He does.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is cool, you mentioned how they were originally going to be a much younger cast. Apparently, Richard Donner was originally going to direct. Richard Donner, of course, Superman and the Goonies, and he split to go make Lethal Weapon. So, and that's one of those things where it's like Metallica and Megadeth. Like, it's so great for the world that we got Donner's Lethal Weapon and Schumacher's Lost Boys out of that split.
And that's the guy who wanted it to be kids.
And then Lauren Schuler Donner, who was Donner's wife and producer, had produced San Elmo's Fire with Schumacher. So when he got in the mix, he wanted to age him up. Another thing that I think is super interesting is that Santa Carla isn't a real town. And for me, growing up in Indiana, I didn't realize that there wasn't a Santa Carla, California. And then when I just became aware of Santa Cruz at some point, I got very confused, and continued to be confused. And then there is a Santa Clarita. So it's all really confusing, but apparently, they did make the movie in Santa Cruz, and apparently the city of Santa Cruz wasn't very happy about being in a film being portrayed as the murder capital of the world, right? So, given that town has a real life history with serial killers and true crime and stuff like that. But it's interesting because now that they did that, now they play it up. Now you can go on like Lost Boys tours and get like maps, and now they're like, now that it's a classic, they're like, and of course,
I never got a chance to do any of those tours yet.
Me neither. I want to,
bro, but I have something for you here that's really screwed up. Let me tell you a little story here. This is amazing.
Please.
Okay. One of my ex-girlfriends, I had finished doing a show, and she wanted to go to a bar in LA. I think we played the whiskey. She's like, let's go to Davy Wayne's. And I go in there and we're having a couple of drinks. She's like, I'm bored. Do you want to go over to my friend's house? And I was like, sure. And she's like, trust me, you'll really like it. So we get in the Uber. I'm a little messed up, and we're going through these woods and stuff. I'm like, man, where are we going? And then I start seeing really, really big houses. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. And we go through the gate, and I was like, yo, where are we? She's like, we're at Kiefer Sutherland's house. I was like, no way. Dude, yes. I look, I'm dumbed down right now. I had the black on. I looked insane, man. I looked insane. And he opened the door, and he was hammered. Okay, just like how you would expect him to be, with no shoes on. Okay, and he pulls me in, gives me drinks, and then he starts playing music by himself, dude. It was a very awkward experience. It was very awkward, very cool, but very awkward. And you know what? I had to do it, man. I had to do it. And before the night was over, I was holding it in. I was like, come on, man. Just tell me, how cool is the Lost Boys? Was that the coolest thing you've ever done? That was the best time of my life. I was like, damn. And I have his phone number in here, but he never answers me. He never answers me. It's that one moment we had, but I found it very special. So
yeah, that's incredible. And he probably looked at you and was like, yeah, I think that movie was maybe influenced you.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who'd you got?
you seem like you might be a fan. Yeah, and one of my favorite shows of all time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and its spinoff, Angel. Spike, the character from Buffy, was the look and everything of that character was very much influenced by David from the Lost Boys, which I always thought was cool.
No, that's cool.
A different character, but it was definitely
that's funny because I didn't notice that at
yeah.
all.
And they took the idea from the Lost Boys of, and this has been done in other things, but specifically from the Lost Boys, of vampires who could look human and then would transform into like these monsters when they're in like vampire mode. And that was something that Buffy adopted from the Lost Boys.
Yeah, I saw that. And it's funny, dude, because I'm a big Vampire Diaries guy.
Yes, me too.
I love that. And even named my dog Niklaus.
Nice.
For real. I shouldn't have named him that because he definitely has the attributes. He's insane. But yeah, I mean, I relate to that Damon character, the Klaus character. Those things.
That's rad. I love that show. I covered that show a lot, actually, over the years. I love Julie Plec, who's one of the co-creators of that show, and the originals. I love the originals. I haven't. Yeah. I'm not up to date with. Is it Legacies, the one that's on now? I
started watching that, and my girl, who's a very big fan of the vampires, she was just like, "Nah, it's not the same," because you just got. Well, I forgot that guy's name, the vampire hunter.
Alaric. I think because he's on there as like a professor.
Yeah. Well, he might as well be the X-Men, bro. Because that's kind of what it is. He's a school for vampires and werewolves and weird stuff.
Yeah. So, and I think and what's her name? Klaus's daughter. She's on the show, right?
Yeah, I think that's
the daughter in the original. So we're getting real nerdy right now. I love it. Yeah, when you get into the music thing, I mean, first of all, obviously the music was a huge part of that film. Echo and the Bunnymen covering The Doors. I mean, that's just a timeless piece from that movie. Obviously, Cry Little Sister. Gerard.
Which we open up with.
Nice. Is that your
intro?
That's awesome.
Yeah. It gives people goosebumps, man. Every time I hear it, though, I'm just like, yes, I'm supposed to be here right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that feeling. I had True Blood for a while back in the other band, I'll do bad things to you type of thing.
Yeah.
But this is more epic.
I love it. And you know what? There, it's been covered, Charlie Sexton, LA Guns, Manson, but I think nothing beats the original.
Yeah. You know what? Manson did a really good cover of that, and so did William Control, actually.
I never heard his.
Yeah, he did that.
And In Excess, Joel Schumacher actually directed one of their videos, the video for Devil Inside.
That's pretty cool.
Which I believe was like a tit for tat, thanking them for coming to the soundtrack. You probably know about this. Kiefer Sutherland, the reason why David wears those gloves through the whole movie.
No.
Little fun fact. He broke one of his wrists messing around on his motorcycle. And wears those gloves for the whole movie to cover up his cast.
Wow, they did a really good job with that. I would never tell.
You would never guess.
That's a cool fact, man. I had no idea about that.
Yeah, man. And I've also, this has been disputed since I first read this, and I put it in a video somewhere, and then someone in the comments was like, that's not true. But my understanding is that when the first of them is killed, when Marco gets killed by the Frog Brothers, and David's like, looking at, he sheds that single tear. Supposedly, that was not in the script, and that was actually just a result of those crazy vampire contacts that they were wearing. Yeah, it would make their eyes tear up, and then they caught that in that scene, and we're like, oh wait, that's a really cool little.
That was an epic part too, because those contacts suck, dude.
Yeah, I bet.
I wore them all Warped Tour 12, and I got them by the same people that made the ones for Manson and True Blood and all these people, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be fantastic, and it wasn't. There's nothing you can do. Your eyes just they completely tear up, guys.
Yeah. One of my favorite super nerd facts about the movie is that in the beginning, when we're first introduced to the four vampires, and they each step off of the carousel, Apparently they step off in the same order that they later die in the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, like Marco gets off first, then Paul, then Dwayne, and then David last. I thought that was super cool. And also in the scene where Edgar Frog is explaining all the different ways that you can kill a vampire later in the movie,
that's how it goes
all
down?
Those different ways. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I never knew that.
Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
Yeah, this is just from, nerding out so much. Yeah, it's too bad that we didn't get a real sequel on the one hand. I think coming around decades later and doing the straight to video stuff obviously didn't do it justice. But I know that there was talk about doing a real one back then. And I think Schumacher wanted to do one that would have been the Lost Girls.
Lost Girls, yeah. Which, to be honest, man, I don't know. I'm just, it's one of those movies that works so well just by itself that it's also like, why it doesn't need spin-offs and remakes. And well, people wanted more of that vibe. And there was an opportunity to do it there. I think they could have continued the storyline. And actually, Keifer Sutherland said he would have definitely came back and did it. So it sucks they didn't have that opportunity. But
yeah.
And then I'm sure they'll destroy it this upcoming one.
Well, you know what they say. They can't really ruin it because the original one's still there.
Yeah.
Because I think I try to remember.
But all the new generation, though, will discover the Lost Boys through this movie, and that's painful.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll go backwards and they'll Yeah, it could work out in that way. You never know. So since your band has had its own vampiric resurrection of sorts, what's the response been like? What's the vibe? Old fans, new fans, and of course, you choose this time to relaunch this band, and then unbeknownst to you, there's a worldwide pandemic. So that, of course, throws a monkey wrench into the whole thing. But how's it been going? What's the atmosphere?
I think we were on Victory, obviously, with Dead Girls Academy, and we're very radio focused. And I think we were writing for the radio mostly. But when we did that first record with Ronnie, I really loved the album. I really loved it. I think it was like a definite extension of myself. But he did write 95% of that record. So a lot of that was like his personality. Yeah. What he thinks I am. And he did a great job because I love the record, but it wasn't who I was. It was just something that I wanted to try and see where it would go. And it did really well. But Victory didn't want to put any more money into the radio after a while. And obviously they got absorbed and he sold. That's probably the reason why I didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, so what now? And then he came back in the woodworking with Mission 2 and wanted to, sign me again. And I did. The money was good. And I liked Tony at that point. And there was no problems. And he just didn't want to put up capital with that new endeavor. So that band was kind of lost in the mix because we're somewhere between, what Ronnie created and then where we were going. So that gray area wasn't working for fans. I think people were just like, I don't get it. Either we're going to go the route of Seether or we're going to ride the line like Bring Me the Horizon. But it's like they weren't having any of that. With Michael Vampire changed the name. I still dress like this. I still look like this. You still
you're still you.
I'm me. And when I started teasing online about this, people were way more adamant than I thought they would be. I'm not going to kid myself and say there was a million people, but it was definitely a lot more than what we were dealing with Dead Girls, like at least 3 or 4 times more. I was like, this is a time then. And then I started getting emo rappers and that new genre hitting me up to do different collabs. We loved Drug of Choice. We loved this. We loved that. It's just like, what? You know what I mean? Like, this band has been so hated for so freaking long. And all of a sudden now you all love it. Now goth is cool again.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah. I'm happy I'm here for it. And you know what I mean? And I thought it was the right time to bring it back, and the response has been fantastic. And the new album is fantastic. We signed with Cleopatra, which I think was the best home for it.
Yeah, it's a very fitting home given a lot of the history of Cleopatra and stuff they put out.
They're all dark.
Yeah.
And the tour has been going good. Our tour's a little eclectic. We have Assuming We Survive, which is, you know those guys.
Yeah.
Great band, and I love Adrian, but they are pop punk.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you have that warped nostalgia, but the goth kids are still a little like, so I think people are starting to figure out that we're back, start figuring out they like the music again, and want more from us. So I think there's a future in this, and I'm excited to see what happens. Just follow what I want to do, not what everybody else is telling me to do.
Yeah, which is ironic in a sense, because the more you follow your own path, the more the audience is telling you that that's what they wanted in the first place.
Yes, it's a double-edged sword. In music, man, you've been in it so long like me, but it's like, either you're being fed this stuff every day on radio or billboards, TV. You're fed so much. You're like, I like this song. You know what I mean? If bands like me, you don't get like the opportunity to be spoon-fed this stuff. So like we get discovered.
Yes.
But even most of the time by accident. I'm like, oh, you're kind of like Motionless in White. You're kind of like Marilyn Manson. I'm like, yeah, I've been here for quite a bit. How you doing? But that's kind of how we're discovered now. But
well, and one of the good things about that process of discovery, though, is that when people do discover a band organically like that, you tend to become a diehard. That's where the really devoted fans come from. They feel like it belongs to them. No one told them they had to like it. They chose it.
Exactly. And that's I think that's kind of where that new emo rap scene and the whole thing's going. People are like, this is ours. This is our punk rock. Even though it's not my favorite thing, I don't sit at home and I'm like listening to it, but I respect it because it's a new wave, and those kids really respect what I do, and I love that. I couldn't be happier with that. I don't ever get, and this is funny, I don't get very much, hey, so how's Dead Girls Academy? Dude, I literally stopped posting on the page and no one said anything. So everyone's like, okay, Vampires is where you're at, man. Stick that. They like it a lot. They like that a lot better. It's not that I'm putting down the band or I won't put out more music with that in the future. I just think this is where I'm going.
Yeah.
And I'm stoked on that. Yeah.
Like back to square one. I'm trying to think of that. That's the wrong connotation, but
technically yes.
But back to home though, like kind of rounding the bases.
Yeah. It feels like, I don't want to say it feels like we're starting over, but there's aspects of it.
Well, it's the best of both worlds though, because you get a lot of that fresh newness, but you also have a built-in thing, an aesthetic, audience. So.
Yeah, well, we're able to go out there and headline, which is fantastic. We're doing it here in the U.S. We're going to go do it in Europe. It's one of those things that, we try to do with DGA. It's too early for it. People are just not understanding it. So people understand this. They love it. There's a genuine love. And these girls getting tattoos, the batagram and me and lyrics and stuff like that. And it's like, that wasn't a DGA thing. That was, this band's special to a lot of people. And I guess I was so lost in the label world and the radio world that I was like, not looking straight and going, okay, I'm letting down all of these people that have loved this for so long.
Yeah. Well, and something that you put so much into, so much of your life, and it's one thing to explore other stuff, but come back to yourself.
You're one of the ones. I remember we were at a bar and young men and linemen and you had a conversation. I remember, and I was just like, damn, maybe I should explore another piece of myself. And I'm happy I did it. Honestly, I couldn't be more happy that I did that, because the experience in the studio at Ronnie was so intense.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot doing that, and it was a great 4 years doing it. I would have never thought I'd be like top 20 on radio. Who would have thought? But it was a great experience, and it led a lot. Led me down a good path for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I thought I knew a lot, but I guess I didn't. Now I know a lot more. and
Well,
everything's.
and you also get to be in this now knowing that you scratch that itch, right? And you're not doing this just because it's what you do and, oh, maybe I should be doing something else. Like,
right.
much like those fans when they discover a band and they know they're choosing to like it, you're choosing to do this band now,
Exactly.
So that counts for a lot.
No, it does, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, dude, last couple of things here, bringing us back to the Lost Boys. In what ways do you see, obviously there's some surface things we could name check, but kind of the aesthetic or the attitude or the themes of that movie, what ways do you see that playing out in your art all the time with your band and your presentation and everything?
Everything I do is based around this movie. I think that, I'll throw a curveball in here. When I saw Get Him to the Greek, I was like, this reminds me of the Lost Boys too. It's just there's a vibe that comes with that movie that makes you amped. It's like listening to Van Halen for the first time, or Guns N' Roses, or whatever. And you listen to it, you're just like, oh my god. And when you listen to like Panama, that's my jam, right? And it's like you get going, and that movie for me is like the epitome of what I would do if I was a vampire. Like that. That's me. So as far as lyrics go, intros, clothing. I have a tattoos. I'm basically, I should have been in the movie, man. I'm actually super pissed they didn't ask me to be in this new one.
Yeah, you would think. If someone would have asked me who they should cast, I could I could pick all 4 vampires. You'd be in there for sure.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah. Well, dude, it's always great catching up, getting to hang virtually. Be safe out there. And hopefully you get more free truck stop stuff. Hopefully that's the arc that our culture is continuing on.
Yep. Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
Killer.